Is building a duplex a good investment? Does it matter where you build that duplex and what market you choose? And what factors come into play when you're thinking of starting from scratch and building a multifamily property? In this video, I'm going to walk you through the pros and cons of building a duplex. Should you do it? And what in the world does this have to do with the very first property I ever invested in? The first pro to building a duplex is if you can take part in the general contracting of that project, you can actually walk in with a pretty significant amount of equity. Now, what does that mean, general contracting? Maybe you've never heard that term. That simply means if you can be essentially the boss of the entire project. You're the one who's calling the plumber and the HVAC guy and the framing crew and the roofing crew and the windows and door people and the foundation. You're the one making those calls and you're the one making sure they're showing up on time, they're getting paid. You are essentially the boss of that project. If you can be the general contractor of building your duplex, you can walk in with a pretty significant amount of equity. Now, you may be asking, do I need a license to do this process? The answer is, if it's going to be your property, and especially if you're going to live in it, you don't need a license at all. But you do need the knowledge to make it happen. The power of the internet is you can learn just about anything. But finding somebody that can help you if you've never general contracted a project, it is of utmost importance, especially if you're the one going to be making the calls and you're the one that's going to want to realize that equity. Now, one of the cons to building a duplex is labor and materials is really expensive right now. So before you ever start a project like this, you want to do a really good job of making sure you cost the project. You making sure what materials are going to cost, what's all your labor going to cost, making sure you have contracts in place so the contractors can't just up the price on you in the middle of the project, meaning you're going to run short on funds and not be able to finish. With really high labor costs and really high construction costs, it makes the investment a little more sketchy. So you just need to make sure after it's finished, once it's rented, will you be making enough money and generating enough revenue to make the project worth it? Now, another pro of building a duplex, you start off with a brand new property. Everything in there is absolutely new, meaning you're going to have really low repair bills. One of the things in multifamily we talk about a lot is making sure you're adding enough into your underwriting to cover repairs. Well, when your property's brand new, you don't need to repair hardly anything. That's a huge pro when you walk into a property. You don't have to worry about a furnace going out or a roof leaking because those items are under warranty. You just got them installed, and if anything did happen, you can come back on that contractor under your warranty clause and make sure they come out and fix that project. So essentially, your first few years of owning that property, you hardly have any repair bills. That's a huge benefit when building a duplex. Now, a con of building a duplex, if you're going to do the general contracting, you have to work with contractors. If you've never worked with contractors, that can be tough. Contractors think on a different wavelength. I used to be one. And making sure contractors show up and do the quality of work you expect can be a job that's very taxing at times, which is why it's really important to choose really good and really professional contractors. Now, there's an interesting dichotomy here. You want to find really good contractors that know what they're doing that will show up on time. But ironically, in the industry, those tend to be the most expensive contractors to use. And when you're leveraging the most expensive contractors, any dollar paid over the amount you should be paying is going to hit your return on investment later on. And so you want to make sure that you find that happy medium of somebody that maybe doesn't have billboards everywhere, that doesn't have a big brick and mortar operation, but is still a really trusted source in the community, and you get a referral making sure those contractors will do a good job for you. Working with contractors can be fun and can be exciting because you see things every day. Every time they show up, they leave with more work done. That can be an exciting process. It also can make you lose your hair or turn your hair gray if you choose bad ones. I don't want that for you. Now, maybe you've already lost your hair. I can relate. Now, before I get into our last pros and cons, I want to hear what you have to say. What pros and cons have you experienced when building a duplex? These stories are often so funny and so fun to hear. I'd love to hear your journey of building a multifamily project like this. Another pro, maybe one of the biggest pros of building a duplex, is you get to start off at market rent rate. What that means is, a lot of times we buy multifamily properties and the rents are low and we have to raise those rents in order to match what the market can call for. Well, when you build a duplex and you have no tenants in there, you can start renting that project out immediately at what the market calls for. So you can experience the full benefit of the return day one. Building a project like this can be nerve-wracking, but one of the things we can take comfort in is we can start making maximum revenue without having to raise rents and go through that process of waiting till tenants move out or waiting till a tenant has to renew their lease. We have no tenants. So when the tenants move in, we start their rent at what the market calls for, meaning you're going to make maximum revenue right away. Now, another con is it takes more experience and knowledge to pull this kind of project off. What I've realized is where there's lack of understanding, there's fear. So a lot of times people are nervous about a project like this because they may not understand the process. The power of doing a project like this is, number one, you get to learn by fire because you have to. Sometimes that's a good place to put yourself in. However, I would also caution you about jumping in too early without enough mentors around you to help guide you through the process. So when people ask me, Mike, is building a duplex a good investment? My answer is really, it depends. Depends on a lot of things. Depends on where you're building it. It depends on what the labor and construction costs are at the time. But the biggest question is, what is the cash on cash return? What's the return on investment for building that duplex? Are you building in an area where you're going to be able to require really high rents so you're going to get more return for that project? It depends. The bottom line is the return on investment is our boss. If it's going to be a good return at the end of the project and you can demand the rents for the amount of money you have into the project, then it's a good investment. If you can't, it's not. It's that simple. As you know on my channel, I want to pull the emotion out of investing and put back in some really good logical thinking, because the truth of the matter is it doesn't matter if the project would be cool or it would be awesome to tell my friends I'm building a project at Thanksgiving, or hanging out and having drinks with my friend and then being completely impressed that I'm general contracting a project. None of that matters. What matters is, are you generating revenue with your investments? So is building a duplex a good idea? Depends on the return. Now, the very first property I ever invested in, I built a duplex. When I was 19 years old, I had no money. I asked my parents to help me get a loan. My beautiful bride and I were about to get married just about 6 months later. My parents helped us get a construction loan and we broke ground. Now, I was a builder by trade. This is what I did. So I understood the process of building a house and what that took. But I had never built a duplex before. But I had a lot of family members that had, and they could tell me, you want to make sure you do this on the code because you need a firewall between your duplex and you need this. And they had all these things I needed to do. Well, they were great resources when building this project. So my wife and I started, we built a duplex from scratch. We built that project for $129,000. We moved into half of it. We lived for $100 a month in a brand new place. 2 years later, we sold that for nearly $190,000. So we're talking a $60,000 return at age 22 because we decided to build a duplex. Building a duplex can be a great investment when done correctly. I have a free gift for you. I want to give you our multifamily masterclass, which is a 60-minute training on how I got into multifamily and what I would do different if I started completely from scratch. And how in the world can you, if you have no experience, or maybe you have loads of experience, start, grow, and scale a multifamily portfolio? Go to the description, click that link, and I'll see you in the training.